The following program sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts.
About money, a different approach to investing you won't hear anywhere else. Your host, Mike Adams, is a registered investment advisor and works with investment portfolios exceeding over $100,000 in net worth, and has a proven track record of managing long-term investments surpassing the markets in the long term. The information shared on the following program is for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. And now, here's Mike.
So it's Friday and we're going to be talking about money. So why do pollsters, at this time we're in the midst of this election, why do pollsters select 1,000 people for their sampling? When they're looking for an opinion, why do they select 1,000? Why not 500? Why not 5,000? You know, I'm going to come to that later in the program. I think it has some impact on what we're talking about in terms of investments as well. And talking about elections, talking about what's going on, what label, let me ask the question, what label did the drafters of the Constitution not want to be identified with? And yet today is one word that's descriptive of our country. We're going to come back to both of those later in the program. That is coming. I write an article or several articles, and I answer questions on a couple websites, one called Investopedia, one called NerdWallet. And I've been asked to do some other writing for other articles and maybe national publications. And one of the things that came up on Investopedia is an advertisement by a newsletter writer talking about the 2016 crash. Using a $5 bill, he's talking about a market crash which is going to take the market down 50%. You know, negativity sells. I don't agree with that at all. But if you listen today, there's no evaluation of what this guy has said before. This is a guy who wrote a book called The Plague of Black Debt, How to Survive the Coming Depression. How to Survive the Coming Depression. Now he claims, oh, by the way, that was written in 1993. He was talking about a depression happening in 1993. Now he claims that he forecast. Davidson is his name. He claims that he forecast 2007. He claims that he forecast 1987. You know, if you look at what he wrote, The Plague of Black Debt, How to Survive the Coming Depression, he wrote that in 1993. He wrote some other forecasts as well. He said that Bill Clinton was going to be a one-term president. He was going to be clobbered as he sought a second term. You can be as sure of that as the sun is rising tomorrow. That's what he wrote. He was wrong. Clinton won a second election. He wrote that the national debt under Clinton would increase by $1 trillion. Actually, it went down. He wrote that Yeltsin was going to be a one-term president of Russia, and he was going to be overthrown by the military. He was wrong. Yeltsin won a second term, and there was no military overtake of the government. And he said, in this book he put out in 1993, in a few years, millions of people will be upside down in their mortgages. They'll walk away from their homes. And, in fact, he was right. He wrote that in 1993, and he now claims that he predicted the Great Depression, or the Great Recession, of 2007, 14 years earlier. But he was predicting it going to happen in 1993, 1994. He was predicting it soon. You know, I've always said that I could predict the weather. I've never been wrong. I can tell you that it's going to rain. I can't tell you what day. I can't tell you what month. But in Seattle, almost for sure, it's going to rain. You know, So why does he make these predictions? Why does he write these books? And he wrote a book in 1987 called Blood in the Street. He writes those because he's selling a newsletter. He writes those because he's selling a book. He wrote that he predicted the real estate crash. He had written about it 14 years before it ever happened. That is not really predicting that it's going to happen any more than I really predict the weather by saying it's going to rain. That's not really what you would call a prediction. And yet these are things which sell. And people read his newsletter and subscribe to his newsletter and read his books. And he says this is how you have to invest to avoid these things. And he's not the only one. Fear sells. And, in Freakonomics, Levitt and Dubner wrote a book, Freakonomics, and they said that fear thrives in the present. Professionals rely on it, experts rely on it, and they pose in Freakonomics this situation that imagine a government official charged with funding only one or another of two proven killers. A choice between two, raising the money and getting Congress to approve money for one of two killers. One is terrorist attack, and the other is heart disease. Which do you think Congress would fund? Which do you think, if we could prevent some of those deaths, would they fund terrorist attacks or heart attacks? Heart attacks every year kill 17.3 million people. Since 9/11, fewer than 4,000 people have died in the United States due to terrorist attack. Fewer than 4,000 Americans, both in the U.S. and outside the U.S. But it's the momentary thing. It's the fear. When we have a terrorist attack, when we have something like Orlando or San Bernardino, that gets tremendous amounts of press. Heart attacks seem to happen every day. In fact, they do happen every day, and they happen to thousands of people. So it doesn't raise the concern, in many cases, that a terrorist attack was. Fear sells. Fear sells investments. Think of annuities. And I'm going to talk later in the program about annuities and why I think they are chocolate-covered hand grenades. That's later coming in. But Davidson's not alone in selling fear. Andrew Roberts of the Royal Bank of Scotland said in June of 2010, 6 years ago, that we were going to have, in the year 2010, the market was going to do the unthinkable. That was the word he used to describe the market falling off a cliff. It was going to be unthinkable. Mark Faber, known as Dr. Doom, time and again predicts the end of the market. In 2010, he predicted actually hyperinflation of 100% a year, just like Zimbabwe, where the Fed was injecting money and inflation was going to soar. Well, that didn't happen. So in 2013, he talked about a 1987 crash where the market would go down 30 or 40% in one day and continue going down. Almost no warning. It was just going to collapse. Michael Lombardi of Profit Confidential predicted we were going to have a great crash in 2013. Didn't happen. So what do you think about this? Philip Tetlock was a graduate student at UCLA back in 1987. UCLA. He was a graduate student at Berkeley, Cal Berkeley. And he got involved in talking about predictions. I've talked about him before. He looked at a broad array of experts and a broad array of problems: domestic politics, economics, international relations. He wanted predictions about what was going to happen with the USSR, the Soviet Union, what was going to happen with the Gulf War, what was going to happen with the Japanese real estate bubble, what was going to happen with Quebec, and a lot of other aspects, the economy. And he wrote a book called Expert Political Judgment. And the conclusion of that book, when he looked at all the expert predictions, is their predictions were no better than random chance. The experts tended to be grossly overconfident. 15% of the events that they said had absolutely no chance of ever happening actually did happen. 25 things that they said you could count on, they were table pounding things that you could count on, they failed. Economics, politics, international affairs, all those things. But what happens is that most people don't really look at a track record. They just listen to what people are saying today, and that builds up that fear, and it preys on their fear. That's something that comes along again and again, and we're going to talk about that later in the program too. We're going to talk about an investment which is sold almost strictly on the fear of running out of money. That's coming later. But don't go away. We're about to come to a commercial time. I think there's another aspect in the economy with American business entrepreneurship, and you're going to hear from my guest as well today. We've got a lot to cover. Don't go away. I'll be right back after this commercial break.
Stay tuned. About Money returns in a moment with Mike Adams here on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Did you know the 20-year annualized S&P return was 8.19%, while the 20-year annualized return for the average equity mutual fund investor was just 4.67%? That's a gap of 3.52%. It doesn't sound like much now, but it could mean the difference between retiring in comfort and running out of money. For some seniors, a gap that large could cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars and cut their retirement short. Don't run out of money. Call Mike Adams of Adams Financial Concepts today, 206-903-1019, and learn more about how you can, 1, create wealth for retirement, and 2, protect yourself from running out of money. Adams Financial Concepts specializes in creating and maintaining wealth. Call today, 206-903-1019, or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Now we return to About Money. There's more information waiting for you at adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here again is your host, Mike Adams.
So I've been talking about fear and fear cells. But one of the reasons it happens is because we're exposed to so much more media. It's more immediate today. And the world is changing. We're seeing things change so much more rapidly today. There's positives to that, but it's an uncomfortable feeling for some people. Uncomfortable to see things happen. You know, if you look at what's going on just in a couple aspects, companies are replacing their physical products with software equivalents. And companies are extending their business process. And the result is that some companies are rising from nothing and some are dying. The average life of a company that was in the Standard & Poor's in 1920 is 70 years. Now, for the company that's added to the Standard & Poor's 500, the average life is less than 20 years, maybe 15 years. And it's all around us. Remember when we used to do records and Tower Records used to exist? They're gone. Music became digital. It could be downloaded. Instead of buying albums, you can download individual songs. You can download the music you want to hear and not have all the extras. Between 2003 and 2007, there were 2,700 record stores that went out of business. And not only is it easier to download, but you can download a song for 99 cents instead of buying a whole album for $16 to $20. Leaves more money for other purchases. It's a shift that's going on. You know, there was a time in which we had 2 daily newspapers in Seattle. There was a morning newspaper and an evening newspaper. Now we have one. It used to be the evening newspaper. Now it comes out in the morning. And it seems like every day it gets smaller and smaller. It was a time in which the classified sections were a significant portion of the newspaper, and a significant portion of the classifieds were jobs. And along came Monster, and those classifieds went away. And then came Craigslist, and Monster went away. And you're going to hear today from my guest, OfferUp, which is taking away from Craigslist. Things are changing so fast. You know, the classifieds, the newspapers lost 3 to 4, 3 out of every 4. And their subscriptions are down at least 30%, maybe more. We read things online. I can remember as my children were growing up and becoming young adults, they used to talk about me reading newspapers, and I used to read 3 daily newspapers in the paper form. And they would ask me, "Did you hear about this event?" I said, "No." "Well, you'll read about it tomorrow." In the newspaper, you were reading about yesterday's news. Online, you read almost momentarily, which is a positive and a negative, because online, you get the exposure all over. There was a time 50 or 70 years ago when it took days for the news to travel from coast to coast. Now, it takes seconds to travel. You think about the changes that have happened even in video. TV audiences are getting older and older. The target used to be an average age of 18 to 49. By 2008, the age had already passed 50. CBS, the average age of the viewer of CBS is 59. For ABC and NBC, it's 54. For Fox, it's 49. For CW, it's 44. It's an older audience. And if you look at the first 60 years of television broadcasting from 1948 to 2008, during those 60 years, the 3 major networks, CBS, ABC, and NBC, they had 1.5 million hours of programming. If you look at just comparing that time period of December 2007 to May of 2008, YouTube had over that amount of programming. Video, over 1.5 million hours in 6 months, compared to 60 years for the television industry. I've heard the stories now of young children that walk by the TV. If it's off, they wipe their hand across the TV, and when the TV doesn't do anything, they'll say broken. They've become so used to tablets that when you wipe your hand across it, it turns on, it does things, that on the TV, they wipe their hand across the TV, and they think it's broken when it doesn't come on. Physical products are being replaced by software. Think about the key to your car. There was a time in which we had an actual key that you put into a key slot, turned the car on, and went. Most of the car companies had something like 1,000 different keys so that your key would fit another key. I can remember one time coming out, opening the car door, getting into the car, starting the car, backing it up, starting to drive off, and the car seemed funny. It didn't seem quite right. It was not our car, but the key fit the car. Had to return the car and find our car. Today, the key that you have has a transducer, which is specific to your automobile. They say that it cuts down stolen cars by 7%. It's a significant cut, but it is specific to your car. Very, very close. It sends a radio signal to the engine. You can't hotwire the car. You can't go anywhere without that key. near field communication. All those things are changing. We live in a changing world. And some of those things can be upsetting. The media, the changes that are going on. But McKinsey Global Institute did a study, and they found that this whole change is really upgrading what's happening GDP-wise in the world. Workers are becoming more adept at dealing with the changes, and we're becoming better off. Our standard of living is improving. If you look at a historical aspect, in the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s, worldwide production began to grow faster than world population. It was an agricultural and cottage industry. The world was growing at a 0.3% GDP. People were finally beginning to get wealthier in the 1700s. The steam age came in the 1800s, and production grew at 1% a year, significantly higher than population growth. In the petroleum era, from 1900 to 1960, GDP growth reached 2.4%. And for the first time in history, according to Nobel Prize Robert Lucas, for the first time in history, the living standard of the mass of ordinary people has begun to undergo sustainable growth. Last week I talked about the changes in the poverty level. We've seen dramatic changes. That's changing what's happening in the world. It can be unsettling, it can create fear, but it can create tremendous optimism and tremendous investment opportunities. But let me switch gears right now, and I want to introduce my guest because he is on the cutting edge of the changes that are going on. My guest is Nick Huzar of OfferUp. Welcome to the program, Nick.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't we start with your background?
Sure. Yeah. I kind of came out of college and went through the whole first .com bubble and learned a lot of, I think, what not to do. Everyone remembers that was an interesting time.
Very much so.
Oh, yeah. And, I think, over the years, learned how to build teams and design and code, and kind of had some experience doing that. Before OfferUp, started a company called Connects that, of course, no one knows about. It's a good example of learning lessons, but it was kind of we started this company pre-Friendster. For those that don't know about Friendster, it was, it was the precursor to kind of MySpace. So in many ways, we were early. By the time we started to build out a team, I think we were kind of late to that wave. And so, that's a little bit about my history. Pre-OfferUp is learning a lot through the different waves of what not to do, growing as an entrepreneur, and then ultimately leading to what has become OfferUp today.
So let's talk about OfferUp.
Sure. Yeah. So maybe I'll just kind of start with the genesis of OfferUp. And so you can imagine, going over the years and learning through a lot of battle scars and building things that I had no initial plans to dive in and transform how people buy and sell. But our vision at OfferUp, we're the largest mobile-only marketplace in the United States now. We're at a run rate of about 14 billion in transactions. So a lot of people use OfferUp, but if you rewind to the inception was literally my wife, who was expecting my daughter, and I had a room full of stuff I wanted to sell. And so you can imagine, I'm standing in this room one day thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way. This will take me forever using the existing solutions. And I didn't, dive in immediately. I spent a long time trying to convince myself actually not to do this. I think there's a lot of companies that have tried to compete there and failed miserably. But I think what I believed in was, because of the power of the smartphone and the convenience of having this in your pocket, I believed that this device was transformative and enabled us to rethink really the whole problem space of people buying and selling. And, I think because of that, our belief was there was a much bigger market out there. And we couldn't see it because there was a lot of friction in the way and a lack of trust. And those were kind of the two pillars that we built the whole company on. We really want to be the simplest and most trustworthy way for people to buy and sell locally. And I think the future and the things that we're building looks much different than the past. And again, it's just because of some of the things that you've been talking about in this program is, innovation and ideas that build on, each other. So
we're going to come back to that and talk about that. It's a fascinating company, fascinating story. Don't go away. We're going to come right back after this commercial break and learn more about OfferUp.
About Money with Mike Adams will resume in a moment on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Creating and maintaining wealth has been the specialty of Adams Financial Concepts for over 20 years. Every portfolio managed by Adams Financial Concepts is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. The client's interest always comes first in portfolio decisions. Call Mike Adams today at 206-903-1019 or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com to check out their AFC performance. They welcome your review. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
About Money continues. Remember the website adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here's Mike.
So I'm here with Nick Kuzer from OfferUp. We started to talk about what OfferUp does. I think most people are familiar with Craigslist, but you've taken it to the next step above that. So let's talk about what you're doing that is a significant improvement over Craigslist.
Yeah, sure. I think there's some kind of very big key things that we're doing differently. One is, again, from the convenience of your pocket, you can discover what's nearby. You just simply pull out your phone and your phone knows where you're located. So it shows you a picture of things that are nearby. And we think that's, really exciting, where you can visually explore, what's happening, in your neighborhood, no matter where you are. Again, posting an item is very simple. If you can take and share a photo, you can sell something on OfferUp in under 30 seconds. And that's a massive amount of friction if you compare OfferUp to anything else that's out there. On the trust and safety side, I think communication is really key. And so we're chatting back and forth. It's very familiar to people how they do it today without giving out emails and phone numbers. And so we think those are really important pieces. And so, again, our focus is continuing to just kind of remove friction in the whole process with the belief that the more you do that, the more people will use it.
And people are buying things locally, primarily on OfferUp, right?
Yeah. We're very much focused on local and being the best that we can at local. And so people buy anything from electronics to cars, furniture. These are all very common things that people buy and sell on OfferUp.
And how does it work? If I see something that I want to buy, a piece of furniture or a car or a painting or whatever it might be, how would it work from there? What would I do? I log on to OfferUp. I see this that I want to buy. What happens then?
Yeah, so it's very simple. You see that that painting, for example, that you're interested in, and so you can ask the seller a question, see what time you can go and inspect the item you want. Again, it's all chat based, so you can communicate a time and location to meet, and you simply show up at a convenient location and actually end up paying the seller, and you kind of go from there. But again, fairly seamless communication within the app.
And so it's a direct sale from buyer to seller. So you're not in a situation where somebody says, I have this painting, you send them the money, and it turns out the painting is not really what it was. It's you actually get to see it. You get to see the car. You get to see the furniture.
Yeah.
You get to make sure that it's what you wanted to buy, and it's a cash transaction so that the seller comes up with the cash.
Yeah. And I think that's the benefit of local versus shipping is you can see and touch and explore the item. And so obviously with big ticket items like furniture and cars, that's extremely important. So that's exactly how OfferUp works.
So what's the process if I want to go on, and you mentioned a little bit, go on to the OfferUp and put my product on, take a picture of it, but go through that process again.
Yeah. So, again, you can back to the inception of the company. I'm, standing in a room full of stuff. I think before it was a lot more cumbersome to try to, communicate all these things were out there to be sold. Now, from the convenience of my pocket, I simply pull out my phone. I take a picture of that item that I'm looking to sell. I put in a price and some basic information and hit submit, and I'm done. I can go back to my life, go back to what I was doing. And then very quickly, you'll start to get engagement right away. And we see a high degree of engagement very quickly on OfferUp. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of people, talking about OfferUp more and more and using it, because it's so frictionless to actually take a picture of something and post it and make it available.
So do you have to put in a description as well, or do you?
I mean, you can. I mean, the great thing about OfferUp is very visual, and so it's actually the opposite of a very text type experience. And so we encourage people to type in a description. It helps if you're searching for something. But again, a lot of people just browse and it's kind of that treasure hunt. And that's kind of how OfferUp was designed to be a very visual, experience.
So in order to get onto OfferUp, I imagine you have to download the app.
Yeah, you can go into the iPhone App Store or Google Play, and we're one of the top shopping apps in America. So you'll find us in there very easily, and you simply install the app. You can explore. There's no reason to log in, but if you want to post an item or engage to buy something, you do have to log in so you have an account. But it's very easy, easy to do.
And you've gone beyond the local market. You're U.S. based, right?
Yeah, so OfferUp is nationwide. Again, we're the largest mobile-only marketplace in the United States. In every market in America, people are using OfferUp now, which is really exciting to see. And we've definitely got a lot of momentum and a lot of traction. Our growth is pretty amazing. We have our average user now spends about 23 minutes a day, which is right up there with Snapchat and Pinterest in terms of daily usage. So it's pretty amazing to see how much time people are actually spending on the OfferUp platform.
So give me a description on, if I download the app and I want to browse, how do I go about browsing? Is there anything that I can actually target browse?
Yeah, I mean, the default experience just takes you into, immediately when you open up the app, you're exposed to everything that's around you. And so the idea was just to discover what's there. But you can search by category if you'd like, and kind of narrow down what you're looking for. You can search by keyword. There's different ways you can explore what's nearby.
So if I want to buy a car, I can enter the keyword car or dining room table.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Or you could go into the category and see all the cars that are nearby that people are buying and selling.
It's fascinating and very, very efficient.
Yep. Yeah, like I said, our belief is the more and more friction we remove, the more we get people to use it. So the average American household has about $7,000 of unused stuff. And so you have to think about, why is all that stuff sitting? And again, our belief is friction is in the way. We're all busy about our lives, and so the more we can make it a frictionless and a more trustworthy experience, we believe the more people will use it.
That's awesome. So again, OfferUp, and the app is in the iPhone store and the Google store, Android store. So it's easy to log on to, build an account with, and go shopping.
Yep.
So thanks for being on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Tremendous company, tremendous growth, and tremendous convenience. Thanks for being here, Nick.
Thank you.
So I want to shift gears. I want to ask that question. So what did the drafters of the Constitution not want to be identified with? Think about it. What did they not want to be identified with that describes what our country is today? Well, that word was democracy. Well into the 19th century, democracy was used by conservatives to smear their opponents. If you look at the U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, any of the papers, the Bill of Rights, any of the papers that were written at the time we became an independent country, there's nothing that refers to this country as a democracy. Nothing that refers to Democrats. Jefferson, who is the father of the Democrat Party, actually didn't want to be known as a Democrat. Think about it. Not one mention of democracy, not anyone who wanted to be known as a Democrat. And the reason dated back to a time when Cromwell was in England under Henry VIII. Cromwell was there. And Cromwell used the term to describe rabble-rousers and to describe the scum, what he called the scum of the earth. Those were Democrats. And so as this country became independent, they didn't want to use the word democracy. They wanted to use the word, we are a republic. They didn't want to be known as Democrats because those were the scum, or the words that were used to describe the scum in England under Cromwell. It wasn't until 1844 that the party of Jefferson became known as the American democracy, and they referred to themselves as the democratic faith and Republican citizens. How much has that changed? I'm sure that there's a number of Republicans that don't want to be called Democrats either. But anyway, that's another thing. So, why do people choose polls? Why do they choose 1,000 people to be part of the polls? Well, it goes back to the theory of large and small numbers. If you flip a coin, 50% of the time you flip a coin, it's going to come up heads. 50% of the time it's going to come up tails. If you flip 4 times, how often is it going to come up 4 heads? It's 1/2 by 1/2 by 1/2 by 1/2. Mathematician. That means it's going to come up heads 6% of the time. Once every 16 times you flip the coin, it's going to come up with 4 heads or 4 tails, the same thing. What's the probability you're going to come up if you flip the coin 4 times? What's the probability you're going to have 2 heads? You'd think it's 50%. Not really. If you work out the math, it's 37. But the idea is it's pretty close to even. But if you flip the coin 1,000,000 times, it's going to come up heads almost half of the time. That's the law of large numbers. The law of small numbers says, and there was a study that was done asking what counties had the lowest cancer rates. And we're coming to commercial breaks. So to answer that question, you're going to have to wait through the commercial break. We'll answer that question after we come back, and we'll talk about why 1,000 is the number for a poll. Don't go away. Questions to answer. We'll be right back.
More About Money coming up with Mike Adams on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
How do you picture retirement? House on the beach, small farm in the country, traveling the world with your spouse. The one thing you don't picture is running out of money. Retirement dreams are shattered all too often by poor investment choices, sending many retirees back to work. If you think the job market is tough now, try entering it after you've retired. Don't run out of money. Start planning now. Call Mike Adams of Adams Financial Concepts today at 206-903-1019 and learn more about how you can create wealth for retirement and probably, most importantly, protect yourself from running out of money. Adams Financial Concepts specializes in creating and maintaining wealth. Call today, 206-903-1019 or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
We're back with more About Money. For details on what you hear on today's show, visit adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Now, here again is Mike Adams.
So I've been talking about the law of large numbers and small numbers. Small numbers, there was a survey that went out and looked at the incidence of cancer in county by county throughout the United States. And what they found is that the lowest incidence of cancer were in very rural counties, counties that had fewer than 2,500 people. You can imagine why that might be, right? The lifestyle, the food, all those things that go into that. But you know what? they found that the highest incidence of cancer, the highest incidence, was in small, rural counties with populations of less than 2,500. So why would you find that? Because it's small numbers. 5 or 6 people having cancer out of 2,500 is very significant. Having no one have cancer out of 2,500 is very significant. But when you compare that to a population of 2 million, you get the average. It's like flipping that coin. You can flip that coin, and one time out of 16, you're going to come up with 4 heads. One time, you're going to flip the coin, and 1 out of 16, you're going to come up with 0 heads. Because you're flipping the coin a very small number of times. If you flip that coin 1,000,000 times, the chances of having 1 million heads is so remotely small. I don't know if you would have or I would ever have the patience to do that. So that begins to explain why 1,000. Because 1,000 people is a sample. And the accuracy of that sample depends upon the number of people that you talk to, the number of people you get opinions from. And it's either a yes or no kind of sample. And when you look at that, it's the normal curve. Mathematicians call it the normal curve. It's the bell-shaped curve. To be within 95% correct, you have plus or minus 3%. In order to get plus or minus 3% or plus or minus 3%, you have to get 1,000 people to answer the question. Why do you not use 5,000? Well, if you want plus or minus 2%, it would take 2,400. So it's a question of cost versus accuracy. You want to get it more accurate? You can do that by asking 2,400 people the question, but that's more than doubling the cost of your survey. You want to get it within a 1% accuracy? You have to ask 10,000 people, 10 times the cost. So the reason you use 1,000 people is you're within 3% accuracy of having the right number. Now, when somebody says somebody has a 5 percentage point lead or a 3 percentage point lead, it means that's going to be plus or minus 3%, 95% of the time. But that's why they use 1,000 people in a sample. So now if someone ever asks you, why do they use 1,000 people? Now you know, right? Now you know. So I wanted to bring this whole thing to an end about fear. Because one of the investments that people are encouraged to make are annuities. And there's 2 things about annuities that we learn. Number 1 is they're increasingly sold to baby boomers and older people who are worried of running out of money. They're sold on the basis of fear. The second thing is that they're very, very complicated, hard to understand, and so many financial penalties that the only people that really make any money are the financial advisors. That's the one and probably the only one reason, according to Susie Orman, who I don't agree with very many things on, that's the one and only reason she says annuities are sold. And the way they're sold, there's no such thing as a free lunch, but many people attend the free seminar, and it's almost always the same pattern. The Securities and Exchange Commission and FINRA says that over half of the flyers are misleading. That saying that annuities are low risk is misleading. These are the regulators that are saying this. They're based on creating fear, and 9% of the people that attend those seminars will buy an annuity. The pattern is always the same. It's described again and again in financial books. It is to bring the seminar people together and to make them sweat a little, to pose a problem, at the same time that the annuity is the solution, but never use the word annuity. And to push, will your retirement survive the economic meltdown? So I talked about the beginning and the number of people that forecast we're going to have a recession, we're going to have a meltdown. Things are going to go very, very badly. The idea is, will your retirement survive an economic meltdown? And facing those new economic challenges, and there'll be 15 or 20 slides that pose all these issues of a meltdown, of running out of money, healthcare costs rising, transportation rising, all these things. And 47% of Americans are going to run out of funds if they retire at age 65. That's all part of it. Are you going to be part of the 47%? Well, you really don't have anything to fear if you plan for it. And then comes the pitch for the annuity. It's the same pattern over and over again. The seniors are the target group. And 20% have inappropriate investments or pay significantly higher fees. And they're told these are guaranteed investments. They've never gone broke. But the fact is, Executive Life was the largest insurance company in California in 1961. The state had to take it over. First Capital Life was based on junk bonds. They failed. Mutual Benefit Life was a tremendous shock. Tremendous shock. It was considered conservative, blue chip, solid A+ ratings. And what happened is that the payments were frozen. It was extreme hardship. Guaranteed, yes, but it took forever. Baldwin United was acquired by MetLife, and the payments were delayed for 4 years. It's not guaranteed. They're like chocolate-covered hand grenades. They're sold on the basis of you're going to run out of money if you don't do something. So here's a way to guarantee money for the rest of your life. It's not an absolute guarantee. It's a probable have money. It's on an investment side. You pay 2% for the insurance side of it. You get mutual funds within the fund that are also highly expensive. It's a bad investment, but it's sold mainly on the basis of fear. It's a chocolate-covered hand grenade. In so many ways, it sounds so great, but put it in your hand, the chocolate melts and the grenade goes off. It's the biggest benefit is to the financial advisor, and they get paid anywhere from 6 to 8 to 10% of the money you put into in the annuity. You know, when that much is paid to the financial advisor, there's a tremendous incentive to sell that. And that's what it is. It is a selling thing, and the pattern is always the same. Anyway, that wraps it up for today. Have a very wonderful weekend. It looks like it's going to be a great week, and I will be back next Friday to talk about money.
You've been listening to About Money with Mike Adams, a registered investment advisor. If you'd like more information about what you heard today, or about Mike's investment philosophy and strategy, or if you want Mike to evaluate your own portfolio, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com. The information shared on the preceding program was for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. Join us again next Friday afternoon at 3 for more About Money with Mike Adams, here on Business Radio 1300 KKOL.
The preceding program was sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts. Creating and maintaining wealth has been the specialty of Adams Financial Concepts for over 20 years. Every portfolio managed by Adams Financial Concepts is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. The client's interest always comes first in portfolio decisions. Call Mike Adams today at 206-903-1019 or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com to check out their AFC performance. They welcome your review. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Your business leader for Seattle is 1300 KKOL.